In this presentation, we will look into and explore the early life of William Orpen, a renowned artist born in Stillorgan, County Dublin. He was the fourth and youngest son in a distinguished family. His father, Arthur Herbert Orpen, worked as a solicitor, while his mother, Anne Caulfield, was the eldest daughter of the Right Reverend Charles Caulfield, the Bishop of Nassau. Creativity seemed to run in the family, as both of Orpen's parents were amateur painters. Orpen's siblings also pursued remarkable paths, with his eldest brother, Richard Caulfield Orpen, becoming a notable architect. The family's intellectual lineage extended further, as the historian Goddard Henry Orpen was a second cousin. The Orpens lived in a grand home called Oriel, set on an expansive property with stables and a tennis court. It was in this environment of privilege and encouragement that William Orpen grew up, seemingly enjoying a happy and nurturing childhood. William Orpen was indeed a remarkable talent, recognized from the outset for his extraordinary ability. From an early age, his work exhibited the hallmarks of greatness, underpinned by an exceptional energy and dedication that remained constant throughout his career as a painter. His mastery of draftsmanship never faltered, even as he explored new techniques and sought innovative ways to convey his emotions through his art. Orpen's sensitive disposition became particularly evident during his time as a war artist in the First World War. Confronted with the harrowing realities of war, soldiers maimed, gassed, and suffering unimaginable horrors, he was deeply affected by what he perceived as the indifference of military leaders to this human tragedy. This emotional response influenced his work, leading him to produce pieces that were sometimes deemed unsettling or provocative by his contemporaries. Nevertheless, Orpen's enduring legacy lies in his unparalleled skill as a craftsman and his extraordinary talent as a painter. He deserves renewed recognition for his contribution to art, a sentiment echoed by none other than John Singer Sargent, who regarded him as a rising star. This endorsement no doubt contributed to Orpen's successful career, particularly as a sought-after portraitist. Born in 1878, Orpen achieved early acclaim. By the age of 13, he had begun winning major awards at the Dublin Metropolitan School of Art, where he studied for 6 years. In 1897, he continued his education at the prestigious Slade School of Fine Art. By 1900, Orpen had joined the New English Art Club, supported by mentors from the Slade. His career gained momentum, and in 1901 he held his first solo exhibition at London's Carfax Gallery, marking the start of a long and successful journey in the art world. In Chelsea, Orpen carved out a space for himself, a studio where his talent thrived. He shared this space with his friend and fellow artist Augustus John, teaching students privately while continuing to explore within his own work. Though his heart was divided between two cities, Dublin and London, his dedication to both teaching and painting remained unwavering. He produced striking portraits, delved into historical themes, and wrestled with allegorical ideas, ever pushing the boundaries of his craft. By 1904, Orpen's journey took him to Paris, a city bustling with artistic energy, accompanied by his friend Hugh Lane. This trip opened his eyes to new perspectives and ideas, so much so that by 1908 he began exhibiting regularly at the Royal Academy in London, a milestone that cemented his place among the leading artists of his time. But Orpen's true brilliance lay in his skill as a draftsman, as we shall see. For him, drawing was more than a preparatory act. It was the power behind his art. Hour after hour he observed the world around him, recording every line and arabesque with a mastery few could match. His pencil didn't just capture shapes, it brought them to life, animating the figures on every page and revealing their core essence. Through his drawings, Orpen lets us in on the secrets of his process. These sketches, whether quick studies or polished works, offered an intimate look at the artist's world. Over time, his drawings became art forms in their own right, celebrated for their honesty, beauty, and flawless technique. They remind us that behind every masterpiece lies the quiet labor of discovery, where an artist transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. In William Orpen's hands, even the simplest line became a thing of magic, a testament to a life spent looking deeply into and bringing life to bear with every stroke. Two examples of portrait drawings by Orpen that are delightful drawings. On the left is of a woman in profile, the other is a mixed media portrait of the artist's mother. Each displays a total command of the media, with linear design, as in the case of the profile portrait on the left, and the eloquent portrait of the artist's mother, as it is conceived in simple mass, with the added tonal preparation on toned paper, where he highlighted slightly for further discovery of each form. Each is fully realized in its own right. Before moving on, we thought it of interest to see how, by use of line alone, Orpen has captured his subjects on paper with amazing animation, as he looks into the character of each person, depicted with the simplest of means to maximum effect. Oftentimes it would seem the more information put into a work of art, the better, but more often it is the case that achieving your given results can be done very simply and without unnecessary elaboration. Orpen moves as fluently into paintings of domestic life as he does in portrait work. His canvases of interior settings, for example, in which he is faced with a variety of issues, from the problem-solving of difficult lighting conditions, sometimes from opposing directions, to the added arrangement of figures in space that must contribute to a narrative or general idea. We ask, what is happening? Are we looking to learn something more about their private lives? And for the artist, how has he technically solved those problems and made them all work harmoniously as a unit? Orpen has done that and more. One can see Orpen had an eye for what Vermeer accomplished by using a single light source and, going a step further, by his own curious inventiveness, added the difficulty of using mirrors to his picture-making skills. Remarkably, Orpen opened up for himself new and difficult painterly challenges, and did not shy away. He fully understood how to coordinate the complexity of the vision he had before him. There is a surety of hand and eye that makes it known that Orpen was no ordinary painter. Orpen also had more personal work he employed, as he takes an individual character and moulds him into a story or attitude as in the work shown, where he chooses to compose them in very different settings. The painting of the gentleman titled "The Bitter Curaçao" is, as the title implies, a look at a man whose upfront and personal persona is composed tightly, as if to see his disposition as honestly and truthfully as he found him. In another canvas is the striking black man, majestically posed, and complementing his features is the draped muffler, added in such a way that it adds great dignity to the sitter as it flows elegantly down. A magnificently rendered canvas. Orpen also posed his wife in a variety of canvases and in costume, not unlike John Singer Sargent, when a decorative element was needed to facilitate the composition and to lighten up the general feeling and design. An artist's creativity has to be satisfied by any means necessary to keep one's work sharp, and very often that entails family members too. And in keeping with his inventiveness, Orpen would on occasion add to his colouring a striking odd colour note, a sometimes drastic accent that can be startling at first. But isn't that the role of being creative? To explore what nature provides and be attentive to the occasion, even if unharmoniously declared. It's the one thing Orpen did not deny himself, was the right to be out of sync and not let the passing whim be denied. However, he was well aware of keeping a standard that is part of good etiquette in painting as well. Figure work for its own sake is another aspect of William Orpen's orbit that is quite interesting, as he takes on painting the figure in a more traditional fashion in the established standard of soft chiaroscuro, often referred to as the use of contrasted light and shadow, and, while used for many generations, it is still a good practice that challenges the contemporary painter as well, to its importance in understanding the undulating forms as they reveal themselves from the emerging light, caressing each anatomical modulation. Orpen effortlessly uses even more ways to handle the figure, as light challenges his mind. The task of painting the nude is always difficult to paint well, but when painted under complex sources of lighting, it is the ultimate task for anyone to resolve, and again, Orpen is up for the challenge. This can only be accomplished with the most confidence if one's materials and methods are second nature. Orpen was not too above the occasional history painting either, as some would discount in picture-making, but produced his painting of Job, where the suffering servant of God is portrayed in the agony of faith. Orpen does not shy away from any topic as suggested earlier, but steadfastly confronts it. Now, as we look to other canvases and find Mr. Orpen in the studio, it is interesting to find the written account of his studio as follows. William Orpen's studio was the hub of a phenomenally successful practice as a portrait painter. While other artists struggled to sell their work in the difficult conditions of the interwar art market, Orpen prospered, and the studio was remodelled in 1929 to his requirements and enlarged. He previously shared the studio with the art dealer Hugh Lane until Lane left, at which time Orpen remained and added more space to it by leasing the next door building and joining the two areas. His reputation and preeminence as a portrait painter provided him top income well above his peers. Of the more intimate pictures by Orpen, there are the interior paintings of the chess players that have the drama and interest in the game well expressed on their faces, the wicker chair and glowing light filtering in as if a long day of gameplay was being tested to the final checkmate. Another work is a woman at leisure, reclining, and the tonal arrangement is softly rendered with a fine accent of blue above, to add colour balance overall. The single figure painting is also one of softer lighting with a woman whose work seems never done, a brilliant piece. After Orpen married, he used a studio in his Chelsea home. With the birth of his second child in 1906, Orpen, needing more space and peace, began to work elsewhere. The studio he found in South Bolton Gardens was one of a row of speculatively built studio houses designed by the arts and crafts architect Walter Cave. Built in 1904, they had steeply gabled, slate-hung roofs, rough-cast walls, and small-paned windows. Each contained living accommodation on the ground floor, service rooms in the basement, and a tall, north-facing, first-floor studio. Orpen's growing reputation encouraged him to think in grander terms than this simple studio. Orpen initially shared the building with Hugh Lane, the art dealer. When Lane moved out, Orpen took over the whole house. The studio and the sunny south-facing rooms behind it provided the setting for a series of paintings of himself and his models. Moving on now to the work that made Orpen a phenomenal success and has provided so many clients a treasured work of art, is his portraiture. We have a cast of characters in every conceivable type of costume and accessory. Starting off with the more entertaining personages in paint, we have the very elegant chef painting, a striking work with powerful dignity that is captured by a confident food master. Then we have two equestrian portraits of note. First, Captain Shaw Taylor, seated with hat and whip, a very handsome gentleman with a confident expression. The attire and pose rendered by Orpen are right on the money. All is perfectly drawn, and is the type of portrait that one never tires of seeing, so well conceived. Then on to another rider, Captain Marshall Roberts, a three-quarter length portrait that is well composed and the gesture relaxed. The mood is as if ready to ride. Added to the stately personages is the Honourable Sir Winston Churchill, also a painter in his off-duty time. It is a certainty that the two painters had much shop talk to discuss and debate over painting sittings. The characteristic gesture of Churchill is one that Orpen no doubt spotted right off and used. And, right in line with pomp and ceremony, is the very fine portrait of Lord Glenavy, ex-Lord Chancellor of Ireland. What artist would not want to paint this character? It is full of life, even to the attire that sparkles with golden threads. The head is magnificent in animation, as it is the single most important part of any picture to handle well. Following is the war correspondent of the First World War and writer Dr. E.J. Dillon. The lovely arrangement and placement of hands to head form a moving triangular flow that keeps one looking on with the delightful accents of light blue of the shirt. Very well done. Charles Robert VI, Earl Spencer, is another well-known portrait by Orpen. Lord Spencer also sat for a portrait drawing by John Singer Sargent, which is noteworthy. Of the ladies, we have a portrait in colourful attire of Dame Madge Kendall by Sir William Orpen, with powerful colouring and a dominant gesture with a very strong searching stare. Now, in a change of habit, we find the curious portrait of Yvonne covered in white apparel. The modelling of the face is superb. Noteworthy Yvonne Opic was Sir William Orpen's lover from 1918 to 1928. She had a beautiful figure, golden curly hair, and like William, she had striking blue eyes. They both had a wonderful sense of humour and were madly in love. They parted company after 10 years, but it must have been amicable, as William gave her some nice parting gifts, his Rolls-Royce, including his chauffeur, William Grover Williams, a house, and some artwork. Yvonne married the chauffeur the following year in 1929. As the First World War began, we find Orpen in the thick of it as a war artist. He volunteered, and while his Irish countrymen largely returned to their native land, Orpen remained and began his vast number of portraits and paintings of the war, and subsequently afterward of many of the generals. Orpen was sympathetic to the British war effort and told Keating, "I'll do what I can. I won't fight anybody or kill anybody, but I'll do something." Orpen declared his availability to enlist under the Derby scheme in December 1915. He was commissioned into the Army Service Corps as a second lieutenant and stationed at Kensington Barracks. Orpen was promoted to the rank of major and arrived in France on the 8th of April, Easter Sunday, in 1917. He spent much of the next 2 years in France, far longer than any other British war artist. He was afforded a personal car and driver. He employed a batman, an assistant, at his own expense, and he enjoyed an unusual freedom of movement and access to senior military personnel. Orpen's experience of the war affected him deeply. Although his celebrity as a war artist brought him greater fortune and fame, he never recovered from both the physical and mental trauma of the experience. His health deteriorated over the subsequent decade until his passing in 1931 at the age of 52. And finally, we trust you enjoyed the work of Sir William Orpen, a true original and one of the finest portrait painters of any era. Thank you to those who helped by way of a donation or super thanks. It's much appreciated, and there is a PayPal below for any amount. So until next time, it's bye for now.